The GPS DairyCAST features the high-value insights of the GPS Dairy Consulting team's trusted advisors and the owners and managers from the elite dairy farms they serve. These conversations deliver on the GPS Dairy Consulting promise to inspire change and grow leaders.
Hello and welcome to the GPS DairyCAST. I'm Peggy Coffeen from the Up Level Dairy Podcast, serving as your host. And joining me today is GPS team member Nathan Pokowski to share his knowledge and experience and what it takes to not just put up forage, but prepare for, harvest, fill, and pack excellent quality forage to keep cows healthy and production at peak performance. Nathan is going to share his 3 gold standards of excellence with us today, just in time for you to take these tips and turn them into practice for the harvest season. Welcome to the GPS DairyCAST, Nathan.
Thanks for having me today, Peggy.
Nathan, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do with GPS.
Yeah, I'm a dairy nutrition and management consultant here in Michigan, servicing farms in mid-Michigan, Northeast Michigan, and Southwest Michigan.
I'm curious for you, what does this time of the year look like for you as a dairy nutrition and management consultant? What do you spend your days doing during this season of harvesting and filling and packing?
It's getting out there first off with a pre-harvest meeting, making sure that we're getting everybody on the team on the same page, going through what our goals are, what we did last year, what we did right, what we did wrong, what we're going to do to improve it, and how we're going to get better. If we don't have these meetings and we don't have these discussions, then we can't expect to take our dairy to the next level. And so we just need to make sure that we're making the time for these meetings, and as well as getting out there and spending some time scouting, getting out in the fields and measuring our haylage, and then preparing for when we're going to take it off. You know, hey, we're going to take it off at the next weather window we have. And sometimes on first cutting, and I guess all haylages, you got to gamble with the weather a little bit. And so that means that, hey, we may have to go now. I know there's, maybe a little bit of rain in the forecast, but we want to get that good quality, then we got to go. We just want to avoid the downpours if we can.
So this time of the year, you are spending a lot of time looking at your weather app on your phone, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, weather app, and, making sure that we're, getting the plan in place to put up that high quality haylage. Yeah.
And it all starts these standards for producing excellent quality forage. It starts way before you're ever in the field, doesn't it, Nathan?
Yeah, I mean, we go through some issues in the previous years, and we kind of look around and say, well, we don't want to do this again. We don't want to put forage there. We want to make sure that we get it up at the right dry matter, the right cutting. And, as the year goes on, sometimes we forget about those things. If it happened earlier in the year and now we're to the new year. And so we just need to make sure that we're making notes of that and bringing that up during the pre-harvest meeting.
And that's one of the values that you bring to the dairies you serve, is being that outside set of eyes to help the dairy see what they can't see. But what you also can see is what's possible for them, and where they can go and grow as they are on their quest to be elite dairies and dairies that you're serving as a GPS dairy management and nutrition consultant.
We want to do what's best for the cows, and we want to maximize performance.
And that's your dedication, especially at this point in the game, to making sure that you're setting up your clients and those that you serve to produce excellent quality forages. And Nathan, you really honed in on 3 gold standards for excellent forage quality. And that's what we're going to be covering today. What is the first one you would like to draw our attention and focus to in this conversation?
Yeah, I think first we can talk about bunker hygiene. That's one of the first things I think we need to be looking at before we even get ready to go out and harvest the crop.
And Nathan, you work with some excellent dairies that do a fantastic job of putting up forage. What are the best dairies doing to prepare the bunker before harvest even starts?
It's making sure that bunker is clean. We got a nice, clean, flat surface. I do have some dairies that have street sweepers. They'll go out and clean off all of the leftover bits of haylage or clumps of haylage. Maybe there's some dirt out there, rocks. And then in some cases, we actually have holes in the bottom of the bunker floor. And we'll take some time to actually cut those holes out and put cement in there so that we have a nice flat surface so we're not collecting water, dirt, or something else.
So step number 1 to excellent quality forage is just taking the time before harvest even starts to really assess the bunker itself and make sure that that is prepared. And so if you fail to do those things, what are the consequences that you end up seeing later on if those steps are skipped?
Yeah, it's just going to lead to poor quality forage, wet forage on the bottom of the feed pad or on the bottom of the bunk or pile, or dirt or debris or anything else that we wouldn't want the cows to have going into the feed. So making sure that that's clean so that that doesn't happen is important. And if we're going into a bunk, it's a great time to assess the bunker walls. Maybe there's some repairs we can do there. There's some patching material that you can put to seal up the holes of the wall. And then additionally, wrap the walls with plastic so that we can ensure that we can keep the oxygen out. We don't have extra spoilage along those walls.
So those are some of your key recommendations for preparing the bunker as that first step in producing high quality forage.
Correct. Yeah. Let's get a nice clean surface. And in addition to that, we can actually take some time and actually draw out where we want to put our piles, our haylage pile. Hey, it's going to go here. And we're going to put it in this location because it's going to slope away from the water at feed out, and we're not going to have a puddle of water. So taking the time to assess the bunker and understand where we're going to put that haylage is important.
Let's move on to gold standard number 2 for producing excellent quality forage. What is that next gold standard, Nathan?
As we get ready to harvest haylage, we need to be thinking about what moisture we want to put it up at and how we're going to get that done, and that we have the tools in place to get that done. So that would be my gold standard number 2. And I'm talking a lot about these things right now with producers as we go through our pre-harvest meetings. And that's definitely a point that comes up is moisture. And one of the things that I do for my producers is I put a summary together of all of the forage samples throughout the year to review the moisture. What went good, what went bad, why did we have a layer in the bunk that was, wet or dry, whatever it might be, right?
So it sounds like when you take the time to do that analysis, it really tells a story of the impact of moisture levels throughout feed out.
Right. So yeah, we are able to say, hey, well, we had spotty haylage, and say it was second cutting, third cutting, fourth cutting, whatever cutting it might be. And why was that? Well, we had some wet loads coming in. And so now the conversation goes to, okay, well, what are we doing to avoid those wet loads? If we have a couple loads, we can set them off to the side in front of the corn silage pile. I'm not saying that's the spot where it should be. On different dairies, there might be a different spot, that they're going to put those wet loads. But typically for me, it's been in front of the corn silage pile. And we'll feed through them right away so that we can avoid those wet butyric layers in a pile.
And when we're looking at that, we're talking a lot about moisture levels. And so what dry matter should we look at targeting at harvest?
For a pile, I want to fall in that 38 to 40% dry matter would be the perfect. Like if I were able to have 40% dry matter on my haylage pile, that would be perfect. I can get it a little bit drier than that. I can go up to 45 or so. But I definitely don't want to go any lower than 38. We start to get lower than 38, we run into problems with the butyric haylage, and we just want to make sure we avoid that. And so, I explained earlier about having wet and spotty loads coming in, and if we get 1 or 2, fine. But if we start getting 5, 10 of them, then we probably have done something wrong. We need to stop someplace and come up with a different plan.
So in the mind of a dairy nutrition consultant, 40 is the magic number. And now, does that number fluctuate if we're looking at bunkers and piles versus bags, Nathan?
Yeah, with a bunker and pile, at 40%, 38 to 40% is where I like to stay at. With a bag, we can flex a little bit, get a little bit wetter. You do want to be a little bit wetter going into a bag. Dry, just really dry doesn't work too well in a bag. So, we'll be about 2 points wetter going into a bag. And a bag allows us a little bit of comfort around moisture, wetter.
And when we look at these moisture levels, how do you recommend managing moisture at the time of cutting, when it's go time, when it's action mode?
For me, it's the gold standard coster tester, and making sure that we're using a coster tester, or I guess I could say the new wave ovens. They'll dry them down a little bit quicker. However, there is a new coster tester out that will dry things down pretty quick. There's a lot of digital technology that we can use, like a SIO cup and some of these other things, but on fresh forages, I just haven't found that they're very accurate. They are sometimes, and then they're off, and we just don't want to be off on a couple loads. We can tell some things as they go into the bunk by looking at tires on the tractor, but nothing's going to tell you better than a coster tester.
So that's your gold standard tool for monitoring dry matter.
Absolutely. That, or like I said, a new wave oven works pretty good as well, which is basically an air fryer. Those work really well too. So as long as you have there's a screen that you want to put in the top of them so that the haylage doesn't blow around and mess up your weights on it.
Or irritate your wife when she goes to use the air fryer later.
Right. I took the air fryer. I took the air fryer out of the house maybe a couple months ago, and I put it in my truck. And I said, well, I guess this isn't going to come back to, make French fries or something like that. So it sits in the garage now. But yeah, you get a couple loads of nasty haylage in there, and the wife probably won't appreciate that too well.
So there are tools that you can use when you are in action mode and out harvesting to make sure that moisture levels are right where you want them to be. And you mentioned, Nathan, that 40%, that is your perfect number. However, if we're looking at a pile, are there certain places in that pile where you might actually recommend a little bit of a variation?
I think as you get to the top, we can be a point or two wetter. I really don't want to go down too far past 38, but if we got to, that 37, a little bit wetter on top to help packing, that's fine. It helps to pack it better. I really caution on going much past 38 because, as soon as I say 38, we start to run the line on it a little bit and we're down to 36, 35 all of a sudden. And now we have an issue with some nasty haylage. So, but a couple points wetter on the top part of the bunk to help pack well is definitely helpful.
If you're enjoying this podcast and you want to learn more about GPS Dairy Consulting, make sure to join our email list. Our announcements aren't just for GPS clients, but instead for anyone looking to advance their dairy business. Learn more about GPS and take a deeper dive into dairy farming hot topics. Stay in the loop with our once-weekly emails and have all GPS DairyCAST podcasts, blog posts, event announcements, and monthly newsletters sent straight to your inbox. You can join the GPS email list by clicking the link in the show notes. So Nathan, we've been talking about moisture and we've been talking about just monitoring that dry matter level, but speak to a moment about maturity and what are your targets in your perfect world as a dairy nutritionist and management consultant. In your perfect world, what is the perfect maturity point to look at harvest?
So if I were to look at one thing on a sample and I had my dry matter right, the next thing I'd want to see is a good quality, digestible sample. And I lie right in that range of 180 to 190 for milk cows, high producing milk cows. RFQ, relative feed quality, which takes into factor crude protein and digestibility. And so how do we get that? It's easier said than done some days and during some time points, meaning that we have to kind of fall within the weather window. For first cutting, I'll usually go after a height of 24 to 26 inches for being for conventional haylage and 26 for Harv Extra haylage. And then for second through fifth cutting, if we get a fifth, I'll be somewhere in that 21 to 23 inches. Conventional being 21, 23 being Harv Extra. So we kind of have to play the weather window with that. We might be a point less than that because of weather coming, or we might be a point higher than that because we just weren't able to hit that weather window. But as we get taller, we start to lose the quality. And we want to make sure we have high quality haylage when feeding to lactating cows.
So Nathan, you've been walking us through these 3 gold standards for excellent forage quality. And you just finished talking about these moisture levels and also looking at maturity. And the first point that you made right off the bat was bunker hygiene and doing the pre-work to make sure that harvest goes well and that bunker is ready to be able to put up and to make some good quality feed. But gold standard number 3 is when you take 1 and 2, you put them together, you've got a harvested crop, and now we're into the bunker and we're filling and packing. So tell us what you believe are the best practices for this stage of the process.
Yeah, we want to try to achieve that 18 pounds or more dry matter density. If we can get up to that at 19, 20, great, but we want to hit our goal of 18. And for that, I use the 800-pound rule, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard around the industry. And you take the tractor weight divided by 800, and that'll give you your wet tons per hour that you should be pushing up onto that pile. So if you have more or you have less at the end of that equation, then you need to adjust your tractor weight that's on the pile.
Nathan, you just talked about the tractor weight, and going back to this bigger goal of excellent forage quality, what else would you put in the category of these are best practices, things to do to get that end result of excellent quality forage during this filling and packing stage?
I've told some producers that we don't want to plow snow. And maybe that's not the best analogy, but you picture somebody plowing snow and they got this big pile of snow in front of them and they're pushing all this snow off to the side. And we're going to still have some of that with haylage, but we want to make sure that we're taking it up in a 6 to 8 inch layer as we go up onto that pile and getting those nice layers, and then making sure that tractors are allowed to pack that before we put the next layer on. So tractor tires across what's been pushed up before we push up another layer, and then making those piles at a nice slope. We want about an 18-degree slope. The more complicated way of saying that is a 2.5 to 3 to 1 ratio, which comes out to 18 degrees. So making sure that we're pushing it up in those thin layers and we're getting it packed and we're getting our slope correct.
Are there things that you see happening during filling and packing that as a nutritionist just make you cringe because you know that there's going to be problems later? What's on the don't do list?
Everybody wants to go fast, and sometimes we just need to slow down. Too many trucks coming in at once, which kind of goes back to that, could fall back into that 800-pound rule. Just need to be safe. So slowing down and making sure that we have our entry and exit points labeled out, and that we're not making the neighbors too angry or upset. I understand we got to make hay while the sun's shining, but at the same time, we don't want to frustrate our neighbors by driving too fast, because that definitely makes people pretty frustrated. So slow down and be safe and use caution on the pads, making sure that we have high vis on so people can see us, and making sure that we're making eye contact with people around us so they know when we're coming and going.
Those are some very good points to make. And I'm so glad you brought up a little bit of that safety side of harvest season as well. And Nathan, we've hit up these 3 gold standards today. We covered bunker hygiene. We talked about moisture and timing at harvest. And we also talked about filling and packing. Is there anything else that you would like to add as some considerations when it comes to these key components of excellent forage?
I think it's good to look at an inoculant program and review that and make the decision for your dairy on whether or not that's the right move to make, as well as looking at different ways to cover the pile. I recommend for my producers that they have a oxygen barrier as well as a plastic to ensure the best possible fermentation and that we're avoiding that layer of spoilage on top of the pile. So there's a lot of other things, of course, that we can dive into here, but like I've always tried to do in these things, focus on our top 3 that are gonna get us where we need to go.
And that's exactly what you've done today, is focus on those top 3 gold standards for producing excellent quality forage. Nathan, for producers out there listening that are looking for ways that they can up their game of producing excellent quality forage, how do you and your team help them?
We touched on a couple of them here today through this discussion, and I think most importantly is putting a pre-harvest meeting together and reflecting on how last year's harvest went. In addition to that, having a list of gold standards for you and your team to follow with a summary of your haylage harvest from last year and what you did well, what didn't go so well, and what you can do to improve would be my suggestion.
So that's one of the greatest values that you bring to the clients that you serve, is being able to be that outside set of eyes and to lead those conversations. And those conversations are the good to great difference maker. And so, Nathan, for those that are out there listening and might want to reach out, can they reach out to you or another GPS team member?
would certainly appreciate that. Absolutely. We would love to get in touch with you and see what we can do to take your dairy to the next level.
And Nathan, anything else you'd like to add today?
I just want to say to all the producers out there to have a safe and happy harvest and get after it.
Well, Nathan, thank you so much for jumping on with us today on the GPS DairyCast. I'm your GPS DairyCast host, Peggy Coffeen from the Up-Level Dairy Podcast, and thank you for listening.
The GPS DairyCast features conversations that deliver on the GPS Dairy Consulting promise to inspire change and grow leaders. If this GPS DairyCast has you looking for more ways to become an elite dairy producer, find more information in our show notes on how you can add a GPS advisor to your team.